All right, we should be recording now. I'm going to go ahead and open up lecture 3. Am I echoing again? Let's see, I think I've got this turned down. Still doing it? Good now? All right. Okay, let me open this in PowerPoint. All right, as we wait for this to open, I guess a couple of announcements, or at least one that comes to the top of my mind, is next Wednesday, a week from today, is the career fair. And once you are juniors, seniors, maybe some sophomores, I would strongly encourage you guys to go to it, either for internship or full-time job opportunities. And let me do this for looks like that'll work. There we go. We will not have class on Wednesday, so no class. Probably offer some extra credit if you go. I'm not going to make you get a signature from 3 employers like we've done in the past, but I would encourage you to go there, be prepared, dress professionally, bring a resume. So you've got a week now. I would strongly encourage you to get a resume. Oh, the one that is not working. Oh, well. And they've also got mock interviews here on campus. I believe those are the day before. And usually we have at least one ag employer participating in those. So in the past, we've had ADM, Farm Credit. And so if you've never been through an interview before, I encourage you to do that, get it familiar with types of questions and just the environment that interviews take place in. Generally, there's about 55 employers, and about 25 of those are ag employers. I haven't seen the list this year, but I would suspect it's going to be very similar. So a lot of good opportunities, and you can get college credit. You can get Agri 316 is the upper division ag elective. That is what you sign up for if you do an internship. Anybody do internships? Okay. And I'm just curious, has Don, Mr. Benjamin, got a hold of you guys for presentations or anything? Okay. What's that? This year? Okay. Okay. Do you have to do one? Yeah, we're kind of in a state of transition in our department with Dr. Greathouse leaving and last year, and so yeah, we're still. That's one thing that's kind of slipped through the cracks. I think in future years, I think they'll probably get back to giving a 5-minute presentation. I mean, it's not much, 5 minutes. Yeah, got to talk about what you did all summer in 5 minutes. So, any questions on that? So no class Wednesday. For those of you in my virtual class, I want to keep these 2 classes on the same path, same track. So I'll cancel that as well, and we'll pick back up then on the following Friday. All right, so last time we talked about margins, and I put a margin account practice example on Blackboard, and we won't go through it today, but probably on Friday we'll work through that. So I want to give you an idea of exactly how it works and show you how everything balances out. So again, just to refresh your memory, we have a margin account. You put up an initial margin, maybe $2,000 when you purchase or sell a futures contract. And then those accounts are marked to market daily. And so you may have to have a margin call. You may have to put more money into that account, or if the market goes in your favor, that account builds up. And then when you offset or your position, then you get what's in that margin account. So we'll work through another example of that, and hopefully it'll make some sense. So let's see, let me get to where we were. We went through these examples on margin right here. Commission, we're going to ignore commissions for the most part in here because they're across the board. Some companies you can go online and trade for $7 a contract. I think grainhedge.com or something, you can do that. Others, more full service types of brokers, may charge more. And so if you want to figure for your own personal use, if you want to figure a penny a bushel, if we're talking about a 5,000 bushel contract, that would probably be in the ballpark, but we're going to ignore it for the most part. All right, functions of futures markets. First function, risk transfer. Is this about where we left off? I recall. Okay. Risk transfer from hedgers who want to manage or reduce risk to speculators. They're willing to accept the risk. So we talked about the role of speculators and why they're really necessary for the market to function. One big reason is they provide liquidity to the market. They assure that if you want to sell a contract, they'll likely be the buyer, and vice versa. They're willing to accept risk. They're trying to make money, trying to profit off of price changes. So risk transfer is a big reason why hedgers, by definition, want to use the futures market. Also, the futures market provides price discovery. It provides the market's best guess of the future price. So that's what I don't want you to lose sight of, is that the futures market it's called the futures market for a reason. You're talking about things that are taking place in the future. When you purchase a futures contract, exchange isn't taking place now, it's going to take place in the future. And so through price discovery, when buyers and sellers from across the world come together with all the information that they have available to them and buy and sell, they are basically reflecting that available information on future supply and demand in the prices that they buy and sell at. And so I think this is one thing that's often overlooked when we talk about functions of futures market, is this price discovery. Otherwise, how would we have any idea what to expect the price of corn to be next December, like December 2017? I mean, or 2018 even. There's a lot of information, a lot of things, obviously, that can happen between now and then, but we can look to the futures market and say, this is the market's best guess. This is what the market, which is buyers and sellers from across the world, again, with their information, this is what the market predicts it to be. And so that is kind of goes back to then it allows hedgers to manage the risk. All right, so hedging, we use futures to manage or reduce price risk. It's an effort to lock in a price now instead of waiting until you're ready to buy or sell the product. We talked about how this is important, and especially in agriculture, production ag, where you have all kinds of risks in front of you, from weather risks to everything to safety risks. Farming is year in, year out, one of the most dangerous professions out there. So accidents can happen. That's a type of risk. And so you've got so many different types of risk, price risk being a big one. Many people are interested in reducing that price risk. Bankers like it when their customers reduce that price risk, so they have more confidence in their ability to repay. All right, so it's an effort to protect yourself as a buyer or seller from an adverse price change. So as a buyer, you're worried about the price going up in the future. And so if you can lock a price in, a price that you can work with, then many will do that. Seller, you're worried about the price going down. I was just reading an article this morning about, they're talking about the wide basis that we see right now, pretty much in all the markets. And we haven't talked a lot about basis. If we get to that here in a few slides, but we're seeing very wide basis levels because we've had such a strong wheat harvest, and now we're looking at strong fall harvest, and so just an abundance of supply. And so elevators aren't going to be having to really offer great prices to get your grain. So there's going to be a wide basis, which is the local cash price compared to the nearby futures price. And they were saying this one expert, double quotes, says you should be locking in a basis now because it's likely only going to get worse. Price is probably going to fall and basis is going to get weaker, and which is kind of a double whammy. And so they're saying lock in the basis now. There's different thoughts on that, but it all gets back to managing price risk. Why is hedging oftentimes effective? It's not always effective, but oftentimes it is. And historically, over the long run, it is effective at reducing price risk. It isn't effective at always giving you the highest price. Doesn't guarantee you that by any means, but it does over time lower your risk. Let's talk a little bit about how hedging works. So basis, you heard me just talking about that. You don't have to look far if you read any ag magazine or talk to anybody involved in agriculture. The word basis will come up. And what is basis? It's cash minus futures. So it's your local cash price minus nearby futures. What is nearby futures? The closest futures contract to where we're at now. So right now in corn, remember corn doesn't trade every month. It's March, May, July, September, December. So the December contract is the nearby. Once you get into the delivery months, or in September, it jumps to the next one. So December is the nearby in the corn contract. So if we talk about basis, I'm going to talk about what's basis for corn and hays. We're going to take local cash price, current cash price that Midland Marketing offers for corn, and subtract from that the nearby or December corn futures. And that's what we call basis. All right, cash and futures price can be volatile. We know that. I showed slides up here earlier about in 1 year, wheat price about doubled from January to December, doubled. Here in recent years, over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen a steep decline in prices, cash prices, and futures price would also be going that same direction. But cash and futures prices move close enough in the same direction to allow for effective use of futures as a price insurance tool. And I forgot to bring that book along. Maybe I'll do that next time, or I can sketch it out on here. Cash, futures, and basis. So basis is somewhat predictable. So the difference between cash and futures is somewhat predictable. And I think I brought up Ag Manager earlier in here, and we can look at historic basis, like what was basis last year at this time for corn, the year before that, the year before that. And typically, it's somewhat consistent. Right now, that isn't necessarily the case because, again, we had such a huge wheat harvest. There's milo on the ground from last year in some places. And so we've got very weak basis, which isn't good for the producer. And so it's a lot weaker than normal. But generally, basis is somewhat predictable because we have what we call convergence, and it's also seasonal. And I'm going to go into more detail on that here later. But I guess for now, just know that basis is somewhat predictable because there's factors, convergence and seasonality, underlying it that make it somewhat predictable. So how does hedging work? I think it's useful to show you how hedging works, and then we can get back to talking more specifically about basis and why it is predictable and the seasonality of it and all of that. So let's just go through an example of how hedging works. What is hedging? It's taking a position in futures that is opposite to that position or to your position in the cash market. So in the cash market, well, we talked about being long and short in futures market. If you go short in the futures market, what's that mean? Short means sell. That means you sold a futures contract. So we might sell a July 2017 wheat contract. We're short in the futures market. Well, if you remember back, it's been a week now probably since we talked about this, but we can also use short and long to describe our current cash position or position in the cash market. So if we have wheat growing in the ground or wheat in storage, we say we're long cash wheat. And if you go back to previous set of slides, we did talk about that. So we're long cash wheat. We're long cash wheat right now. We want to take an opposite position in the futures markets. So we go short. It's basically like betting on the other team. And I've used this example in several years. Some of you guys have probably heard me use this example, but suppose I'm a big Chiefs fan. So, I mean, I love the Chiefs, watch every game, go to every game. I don't really, but let's suppose that. And I actually get, I mean, if they win, man, I'm on top of the mountain, just happy and whatever, joyful as I can be. If they lose, I'm down the dumps and borderline depressed. And sadly, there's probably people like that. But so suppose I'm that much of a Chiefs fan. So much so that I could put a dollar value on it. So when they win, it's like I'm as happy as if I won $1,000. If they lose, I'd be the same level of depression as if I lost $1,000. So we're putting a dollar value on it. It's kind of goofy, but let's imagine that. So let's suppose that my doctor told me I've got to do something. I'm just an emotional roller coaster. I'm up because Chiefs if they go 500, man, I'm up and down all year long. If they win, that's great. But if they win and lose about the same amount, I'm just all over the place. What if the doctor said, all right, you got to control this. You got to get level out a little bit. What could I do? So say they're playing the Denver Broncos. Well, I think Broncos. That's what I thought. Yeah. Who's their quarterback this year? Okay. Let's see. Chiefs fan back there. All right. I'm Chiefs and Cowboys. Kind of weird. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Who's the Cowboys quarterback? That's a good question. Okay. So say they're playing the Denver Broncos, and doctor says I got to do something to kind of smooth my level of my emotions out. What could I do? What could I do to ensure that whatever happens, I'm just the same as I am now? Right now, I'm not on a high or on a low. In Colorado, you probably have on a high mountain, right? Yeah. All right. So what do I do? Watch the game, find a new. Yeah, there you go. That's probably the best advice, I think. But let's suppose I still want to watch the games. I got season tickets or whatever. What kind of bet could I place? Bet on both sides, but then you'd be happy either way. So if I bet on the Chiefs and then turn around and did a $1,000 bet on the Chiefs and $1,000 bet on the Broncos, I'm even that way. But so those kind of cancel each other out. What's that? Okay, let's don't make it that complicated. But still, so I'm even on the money end of it, but then I still have this emotion if Chiefs lost, then it's like I lost $1,000 still. So what kind of bet could I do? I heard it. Who said it? Bet on the other team, exactly. So if I place a bet, $1,000 bet on the Broncos, let's see what happens. If the Broncos win, I'm sad because my Chiefs lost. So like I said, it's like I lost $1,000, but I got $1,000 because I bet on the Broncos. So I'm $1,000 richer there, and that offsets my negative $1,000 emotion, I guess. Again, goofy, but all right. And then let's say if the Chiefs won, well, I lost $1,000 bet, so I have to pay James $1,000. Wait, yeah, Chiefs won. I bet on. I'm confused now. All right, so James, I got to keep you out of it. You confuse me. All right, so what I say? If the Chiefs won, I bet on the Broncos. The Chiefs win, so I'm happy because that's my team. It's like I won $1,000, but I bet on the Broncos to win, so I have to pay $1,000. So they offset each other. What's that? Win-win. It's actually a win and a loss, but they offset each other because I bet on the other team. You're saying something because you're a Broncos fan probably, but so it's betting on the other team, and so it keeps me level. That's what hedging is. So let me try and relate this to grain now. We've got a futures market and we've got a cash market. We participate in the cash market. As a producer, you're in the cash market unless you hedge. But if you don't hedge, you're just solely working on the cash market. And you win if the cash price goes up. You lose if it goes down. And we already talked about how grain prices can be volatile, up and down, and sometimes really down, sometimes really up. And so you're going to be on this roller coaster, and you're going to hit it big or not hit it big. And so what we can do then is place a bet in the futures market, bet on the other team. So take the other position. If I'm long in the cash market, or which means I either have wheat growing in the ground or maybe I have wheat in storage, I can turn around. So I'm kind of bought in, I'm kind of long in that market. I can sell in the other market. So take an opposite position, bet on their team. That way, if the price goes down, I'm hurt in the cash market, right? As a cash producer, you're going to be selling for less. If I'm hurt there, in the futures market, that helps me because I sold high and then the price went down. I bought back low. I made money there to offset what I lost in the cash market. Does that make sense? We'll go through many examples. That's kind of the underlying concept behind all we're going to do this semester. Is it's helpful to think of them as two separate markets, and you take an opposite position in the futures market from what you are in the cash market. So let's see, if you're long cash wheat, if you're growing wheat, to hedge, you go short futures. So you're long in the cash market, you go short in the futures market. You take an opposite position. That way, if the price falls, which that'll hurt you in the cash market because come June, when you're ready to sell your wheat, you're going to be selling that cash wheat at a low price to the local elevator. But then you offset your futures position by buying back, you're buying at that low price. Your futures you sold high and bought back low. So you made money there. The money you made there can offset your losses in the cash market. If you're short cash, so say you need to buy corn for your feedlot, you're worried about price going up. You hedge by going long in the futures market. That way, if price does go up, that'll hurt you in the cash market because when you go to buy that corn, it's going to be more expensive. But in the futures market, you offset your position. You went long initially, now you sell to offset, so you're selling at that higher price. It offsets. So we'll put some numbers to this here in a little bit, and I hope it'll make some sense. For hedging to work, though, we need cash price and futures price to move in the same direction. So cash price, when I say cash price, think of your local co-op, your local elevator. That's your cash price. Wherever you're at, it may be the Cunningham elevator or Johnson elevator or whatever, the co-op. That's your cash price. Futures is the board. So Kansas City wheat, Kansas City board trade, now it's under CME group, or Chicago corn or whatever. We need cash price and futures price to move in the same direction. If they don't, then hedging may not work or be that effective. Again, I could explain this, but I really want to get to numbers, and I can talk about some of these. So let's go through a short hedge example. Let's say you got a potential seller. So you're a wheat producer. Anybody got their wheat in the ground yet? Guys, okay, so we're getting to that time. People are getting ready to drill their wheat. You're going to be a potential seller. You're going to sell wheat, hopefully, weather permitting. You're going to have wheat to sell next June or July. So if we were talking about what's your position in the cash market, we'd say you're long cash wheat. So what can you do if you want to hedge that production? Well, you take an opposite position in the futures market. If you're currently long in the cash market, you sell in the futures market. So you hedge by selling a futures contract now. And how does that exactly work? You sell, you call your broker, you go online, whatever you want to do, and you sell a July 2017 wheat contract, Kansas City wheat contract preferably. Although I've heard some people saying with the way the basis is so messed up right now and the problems that are going on that maybe you ought to start hedging Chicago wheat, different type of wheat. But for our examples, we'll say you'll hedge by selling a Kansas City July 2017 Kansas City wheat contract. You do that now. You call your broker up, say, I want to sell one contract or two, or talk about how many. Let's just say you sell one contract of Kansas City wheat. At some later date, so typically at harvest time, so let's fast forward the clock, it's now June, mid-June, and you're harvesting your wheat, and you go across the scales, empty it at your local elevator. You don't have to haul to Kansas City or Salina or wherever. You can haul to Hayes here, if you're here local, and you sell the product. You sell it to Midland Marketing, cash. And you turn right around, call your broker and say, all right, I sold cash, now offset my position. So you offset your futures contract. How do you offset it? You have to buy it back. You initially sold the Kansas City July 17 contract. Now you buy that back. You can. Yeah, you can deliver. So you're saying deliver on the contract? You should be able to. That's kind of what I was talking about last period, I believe. Very seldom. I mean, 99.99% of futures contracts are not delivered on. But technically, yes, the contract gives you a right to do that, but that's kind of the problem right now. Some people are wanting to deliver on those and they can't because they can't get a warehouse receipt from the elevator. But theoretically, yes, you can deliver on it. And so, but question is, and in most years, you would have no incentive to deliver on it. Because if the market is efficient, yeah, you might be able to deliver it to Salina, or let's just say Kansas City, for 50 cents more than what the local elevator's paying you. But if the market's efficient and we have convergence, it's probably going to cost you 50 cents to haul it there. So it's just a wash. You're going to get the same net price for your grain. And so that's why most people say offset that and just sell locally, especially if you're during harvest time. You don't want to be trucking it there. But yes, you could deliver, but if the market works, you should have no incentive to. So a long hedge, you have a potential buyer. So we just went through a short hedge where someone's going to sell in the future. A wheat producer is going to sell next July. Here, let's do a long hedge. So we have a wheat miller, and they're needing to purchase wheat in the future. They want to keep their milling operation going. They don't want to shut down for a while, and they need a constant flow. And so they're worried about prices increasing in the future. So they do a long hedge. The way a potential buyer hedges is by buying a futures contract now. So if a wheat mill, Hudson Flour Mills in Hudson or St. John, anybody from that area? All right, it's a wheat milling operation. If they know they're going to be milling wheat in the future, they may want to start locking in some prices, and so maybe they want to start locking in prices for March 2017. So if they want interested in doing that, they would buy a March 17 futures contract now. And then at some future date, so say March 1st, they buy the product, they buy it locally from local farmers or local elevators, and they, at that point, offset their futures position. So they sell their futures contract. And that's the way a potential buyer would hedge their purchase. So we're working into this slowly. We're going to put some prices coming up here, but let's, I guess, now start adding some dates. So here's our short hedge. It's November 1st. We plan to sell wheat at harvest in July, so the next July. We're concerned that the price will fall. So if we are concerned about this and want to lock in a price, we hedge by selling a July wheat futures now. If prices fall, we end up getting a lower cash price, because let's assume we're selling it locally. We aren't going to deliver on the futures contract. So if prices do in fact fall, we're selling for a lower price here locally at harvest time, Midland Marketing or wherever. But if that happens, we will be glad we hedged and we had this short position in the futures. So we sold the July contract back in November. If prices fall, that means cash price and market works, the futures price is lower then also. We offset our futures position. How do we offset? We sold July wheat in November, got to buy back. Yeah, to offset, you got to do the opposite. So you buy it back, and you're buying back at a lower price. So you made some money. So that will offset, yes. Not very many. I would say stats I've seen, farmers probably less than 20%. Because, a very good question, because several things. Some, it may be they just don't understand it. It's complicated and they've never done it. Grandpa never did it, and so why? Or Grandpa had one bad experience doing it, because you can get hurt doing this too. And had one bad experience, and so never do it again. So that's possibly one reason. Another reason may be the fact that you have to have a margin account. You have to put in margin there, so you have to have some cash on hand or a line of credit with your bank, and then you're also subject to margin calls, which that wouldn't be something that would interest a lot of people. Is just get random calls, say, hey, you need to put you have 10 contracts, you need to write me a check for $3,000 or whatever. So margin calls are a big one. What a lot of people do if they are interested in doing some forward pricing, they do forward contracting. And so they just do that. You can do that with your local elevator, and you're guaranteed a set price, and you don't have margin calls. The elevators turn around and hedging, and they're going to be doing margin calls. But so I'd say most farmers, if they're doing any sort of forward pricing, they're probably not hedging or buying or selling options. They're probably doing forward contracting with their local elevator. But in doing that, the elevators then taking on a little risk, and then they're subject to margin calls because they're turning around and hedging that. And so they aren't going to do that for free. So they're going to charge you to do that. And so I guess my argument for why hedge or why consider hedging is because you can potentially keep that little bit of commission in the right word, but what you can capture that. Yeah, it's kind of commission. It's because they're taking on additional hassle and risk and margin calls, and so you can capitalize on that. But it isn't for everybody, but it should be another tool in the bag. And actually you can evaluate forward contract offers. So local elevator says, well, you can forward contract your next year's wheat with us for $3 a bushel. Well, is that a good price or not? Could I do better hedging it on my own? And so you can look at the futures market, look at what basis typically is, and maybe you would be, your estimation's 25 cents better off hedging it yourself. Then you ought to do that. Or maybe what the offer they're giving you is actually really good and you should take it. So it's just another option in your bag of marketing tools that I think you should consider, but it isn't widely used for those reasons. With elevators, we're going to have ADM here next week. Let's see. Yeah, they're going to come and talk to my classes on Tuesday for 30 minutes. And I've worked with them a lot in the past. And one thing I remember is one of their grain marketers said, we hedge everything. So at any given time, he says company-wide, which they are one of the biggest, if not the biggest, grain handler in the world, they hedge everything. He said at any given time they have only less than 5,000 bushels hedged, because you don't hedge less than 5,000 unless you get miniature contracts. So they hedge everything. So if you're talking about those guys, elevators, I would say it's used heavily. Farmers, not so much. Feedlots, it depends. Some feedlots hedge everything, some don't hedge anything. It's kind of a function of how much risk you want to take, how big your pockets are, and that sort of thing. You can take some big hits. And it also depends on your banker, how much risk they're willing to let you take. Very good question. All right. If prices rise, okay, so you got a short hedge, November 1st, you're going to sell wheat in the future. You're worried about prices falling, so you sell a July contract now in November. If prices rise, you get a higher cash price, but then you have a loss on futures. And this is maybe why some people don't hedge, is because you can't take advantage if the price rises. So say right now you're looking at next year's wheat and it's not looking good, but you're afraid it could go down even more. So you decide to hedge. You sell at $3 or whatever. And then fast forward the clock to harvest time, and let's suppose there's a big drought or whatever, and the price is now $6 a bushel. If you're hedged, depending on what basis it ended up being, but you're going to be in that $3 range. Well, all your neighbors who didn't hedge are going to be selling wheat for $6 a bushel. So that happens. That can be enough to get some people saying, I'm never doing that again. But it could easily have worked out the other way. Say price went down to $2 a bushel, then your $3 wheat is looking pretty good that you hedged. So it's not a guarantee to get the highest price all the time. It's a strategy to manage risk. And really over the long haul, if you take farmer A who sells cash every harvest, does no forward pricing, no hedging, anything like that, just sells cash at harvest. And you take farmer B who hedges everything every year over a 20-year period, the net price should be about the same. Farmer A who sold cash every time, though, his price is going to be more like this, whereas the person who hedged is going to be less variable. But average price is going to be approximately the same. And they've done a lot of studies. I mean, you can find the data and go back and do what if I would have hedged and all that, and they all come out to be pretty much the same, just less variability. Cash and futures price move in the same direction. These gains and losses balance out. So we need cash and futures price to move in the same direction, which, again, they typically do. All right, so here are some numbers. November 1st, you plan to sell wheat at harvest in July. So same scenario. You sell July wheat futures today at $4.56. So you look at the board, it's trading at $4.56. You say, yeah, I can work with that. That works into my budget. I'm above break even. Let's go ahead and sell at $4.56. Let's assume that futures price doesn't change. And if in July, the local cash price equals the July futures price, which isn't realistic, but trying to build up. So let's suppose on July 1st, you sell wheat locally at $4.56 and buy back futures at $4.56. So nothing changed. Yeah, not realistic at all, but The middle of the month. We'd have to look at the contract specs, but yeah, you do. You have to offset. Actually, though, from my understanding, they will offset you automatically because they assume 99.99% of people want to offset. No one really intends to deliver on these. So actually, I think if you do want to deliver, you have to notify them that, hey, I want to deliver this. I'm going to deliver it to Salina for a 10-cent discount from what Kansas City is or whatever. So, but yes, you offset. These contracts expire the middle of the month. So like July 14th would be the expiration. Good question. But typically, on a true hedge, if you're doing it for the purpose of risk management, you sell wheat locally and the next minute call your broker. I mean, that's extreme, but within that same day, call your broker and say, all right, offset my position, which is buying back. So if these are the prices, your net price from hedging is 456. Because you got a cash price, you sold for 456 on the cash market, and there was no profit or loss on futures. You sold July wheat futures at 456, and you bought them back at 456. So it's a wash, ignoring commissions. So your net price is 456. But what if prices change between now and July 1st? They typically do. So let's assume this. So everything's the same so far. It's November 1st. Plan to sell wheat in July. You're interested in hedging. You're worried about falling prices. So you sell July wheat futures at 456. So you're short in the futures market. Now fast forward the clock. It's July 1st. The market went down. It fell by $1. Wheat locally is at 356. And we're going to say that futures market is also at 356. So what kind of basis is that? Cash minus futures, nothing, it's zero. So some locations this may be the case. In Hays, probably not the case. Generally at harvest time, we may have a 40-cent under basis, which means that if Kansas City wheat's at 356, what would Hays wheat be at? We have a 40-cent under basis, 316, right? So, but we aren't throwing that in here yet. We're just saying there's a zero basis. But prices did fall. So what's your net price here? When it's all said and done, what's your net price? 56, exactly. Because hedging locked in a price of 456. You sold your wheat locally for 356. You sold it middle of marketing 356. But you had this other transaction, this other market. You bet on the other team. You went short. You sold July for 456. You bought it back at 356, which is a gain of $1. So you made $1 on the futures transaction. Sold wheat locally cash for 356, and you had $1 coming in from your futures. So in net, you sold wheat for 456 is your net price. That's how hedging works in a case of falling prices. So if you hedged, you're going to be getting 456 net price, while your neighbor who didn't hedge is going to be getting 356. So you're going to be glad you hedged. Let's go through this example in the last few minutes. 3 minutes, we'll go through this. So same setup, sold wheat, July wheat futures at 456. Now let's suppose price went up. It went up by $1. Well, what do? You sell wheat locally at 556. You get that. Then you buy back your futures because you need to offset at 556. What's your net price? 456. So it's the same price because you got cash price of 556. But how'd you do on the futures? Terrible. Lost $1, right? Yeah. So you lost $1 because you sold at 456 and then bought back at this higher price. So sold here, bought back, you lost $1. So you take that off your net price or off your cash price, And so your net price is 456. That won't leave a good taste in your mouth, and you may say, I'm never going to hedge again. But you got the price you were happy with. You were happy with this back in November when you did it. So that is, yeah, quick summary of how short hedges work. We'll obviously work a lot more on this. So let's see. That assignment, is that due Friday? Okay, yeah, don't forget about that if you haven't gotten started on it. All right, have a good week.